Okay, today is Sunday, 30th of June, 2024. Air temperature 33 degrees centigrade, which I think is about 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, with the spring breeding season just about finished, this is just to remind myself about a few things I should remember for the next breeding season. So I think one major point I think I'll try and emphasise. When I started keeping MEDAKA, I assumed a MEDAKA is a MEDAKA is a MEDAKA. Okay, you call them MEDAKA, they're all require very similar conditions. For example, temperature is now 20 degrees centigrade. This strain, this type of MEDAKA is breeding, producing lots of eggs. Why isn't that other strain producing lots of eggs? And so for anybody who is just starting to keep MEDAKA, most strains or types have differences. Some are very robust. They will breed in low temperatures, poor water quality conditions, etc., etc. Others are far more particular. They're more highly bred. If you like, it's a bit like dogs. A mongrel dog, okay, it can be healthier, can be fitter, and produce more puppies, for example, than maybe a highly bred dog. So that, or pure breed dog. So that's the thing to remember. MEDAKA, types of MEDAKA are different in the conditions that they require. I believe now some of the really latest versions being produced in Japan almost have to be treated like tropical fish. You know, that's the sort of temperature conditions they need, and I very much doubt you could leave them outside in the winter if temperatures dropped even below 15 degrees centigrade. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make. You've got to really, if your MEDAKA won't start breeding, then you've got to look at, do you need to change the conditions? Because not all MEDAKA will breed under the same temperature, lighting, water pH, quality of water. They won't all breed under the same conditions. I think I've got about a list of about 7 lessons I've learned in the last 3 months of the breeding season. Most of them I knew more or less before, but at least it's good to reaffirm. These are some of the things that I think about. So starting off with some basic principles. First one, the mistake that I made: don't assume a breeding group of 8 or so fish. There will automatically be a mix of males and females within that 8. I had a group which wasn't producing any eggs, so then I stopped being lazy and I checked them, inspected them, and found out they were all females. So really ought to properly check before assembling a breeding group. So the second point I was going to make, some MEDAKA strains will produce eggs water temperatures of 20 degrees centigrade, maybe even 18 centigrade. Other strains won't produce eggs until maybe the water temperature exceeds 25. And then I think many or most females may not produce eggs when the temperature gets up above 30 degrees centigrade. A few may. I found most won't though. In terms of daylight conditions, Some strains are okay with 11 hours of bright daylight. It doesn't necessarily have to be sunshine, but bright daylight I think is important. But others may need 12 to 14 hours of bright daylight. Some sunshine is preferable, particularly in the early morning when they might be starting the breeding process, mating process. But maybe you might find a strain of MEDAKA that really won't start breeding until they've got at least partial sunshine. Again, some will breed in relatively poor water quality, even if I've forgotten to make a water change, they still keep breeding. But others, they really very particular maybe about having very good water quality. Sometimes if it's found, that like they don't start breeding, a major water change may stimulate a breeding group to start the breeding process. What else on water? Yeah, so water pH of maybe 6.5 to 7.5. Yeah, usually that's okay, but some appear to breed better when pH is neutral to slightly alkaline. 7 to 7.5. Some appear to prefer that to they seem to produce more eggs in that way sometimes. But I've found most the helicopter going overhead. Yeah. So most of my female MEDAKA stop producing eggs if the pH falls to 6 or below, and I think it affects them to some extent that they really might not start producing eggs again, even if you make a water change, get the pH back up towards 7. They might not produce eggs again for a couple of weeks while they get over that shock of falling down to below a pH of 6. And a couple of more points I'd forgotten. Sometimes a group may produce only a few eggs because there are too many males in the group and they're fighting for territory, and they really don't get down to seriously think about the mating process. And then I think finally, occasionally the breeding group will not start breeding no matter what changes you try, water changes, pH changes, temperature changes. So whatever changes you make, they just don't produce any eggs at all, and I don't know why that would be. Now all what I've said so far is just, I don't carry out really proper studies, or it's just my impressions of what I think is a reasonably correct view of the breeding conditions within my climate. I'm in subtropical climate, so that makes a difference. I think in temperate climates, cooler climates, very cold climates in the winter, yeah, I think maybe things might be different. So moving to the hatching area, the fry raising area. Sit down where all the hatching and fry raising containers are. So maybe a few thoughts on the practical side of hatching and raising fry. Previous seasons I used a hatching container, which is about 5 litres, black like that, about 5 litres, and it worked okay. But I sort of decided this season I'm going to change to white because I could see the fry better. You know, you can see what the fry is doing. You can see if there's a lot of debris on the bottom of the container, so you can siphon it up. And it turned out to be good. I'm pleased I changed to white. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, that's what I'll always use in future. But the added benefit has been I can now see dragonfly larvae as well. Now, so previously with the black containers, I thought I didn't have a problem with dragonfly larvae because I never saw any, and I assumed that because the you know, I've got a cover over the hatching area, it's covered quite closely over the top. I assumed, I suppose, that no dragonflies would fly in under the cover and lay their eggs. But that must have been a wrong assumption, because now with the white containers, in the last few weeks, I've found 4 dragonfly larvae. Probably they were there in the black containers eating fry some of the time, but now I check once a week or so and really make sure I definitely don't have any eating my fry. So as I say, found and killed 4 larvae in the last few weeks. And the other thing is that I've decided, so before I just had these 5-litre white containers, but I also had a couple of these 10-litre containers at the same time. They're all very cheap in a sale, $1 or $2, a couple of US dollars each, I think, the equivalent of $2 US, something like that. So I started using the 5-litre ones, and then I moved the fry to grout tubs when they got to what I thought was a reasonable size. We also had these 2 10-litre containers, and I began to have the impression that the fry maintained a better, more consistent rate of growth when hatching and growing in these 10-litre containers than in the 5-litre containers. So although, yeah, it wasn't anything like a rigorous scientific experiment, I definitely had that impression. So I obtained more 10-litre containers. I got 6 here, and I've confirmed really I definitely like them, definitely prefer them compared to the smaller containers, so I only use these 10 containers now. In fact, I've found that I can leave from hatching in here, so I hatch the fry in these, hatch the fry directly in these containers, and I've found that I can leave the fry in there right from hatching until they reach a size when I can move them directly to the adult tubs or my pond instead of using an intermediate stage of a grow out tub. Now I've got the space to be able to do that. I mean, I can easily got the space if I wanted to have, say, 10 of these 10-litre containers, and so that's what I'll be doing next season, and very soon I'm going to be moving all the larger fry out from here, and then all the rest of the fry in another couple of weeks. They'll also be moving out into adult tubs or the pond, and then the spring breeding season will be finished. But the other thing I mentioned, well, I remember, I use a drip, and I've shown it in underwater changes. I maybe 3 times a week I change 20% of the water. So these are 10-litre tubs. I've got 2 litres of water in this reservoir up here, and the water goes down through the tube and drips into here and then overflows out the overflow the other end. So that gives me, 3 times a week, and the fry seem to do very well. So that's an important part, I think, of the process I've had for raising the fry. Now, as I say, breeding season be finished. I'm always looking to improve things, so I wouldn't be surprised if I thought of other changes I might bring in by the time the next breeding season starts, which probably won't be until September. Okay,